revolutionary. Everything changing all the time, playing with your mind. Mother, rearrange. Everything has got to change.
Hey everyone! First off, that was for you Poke fans out there, a little introduction into my topic today of sexual fluidity. So I know sexual fluidity can often be seen as going from heterosexual to homosexual as seen on the Kinsey scale, but being on Hot Pieces of Ace, I decided to talk about the X or asexuality factor that Kinsey also incorporated. When I began looking into the LGBTQ community, one of the first things that came to mind was the Kinsey scale. I remember hearing about it in biology sometime back in 7th grade, but being as we were only 13 and 14, we didn't really go into it in depth. It wasn't until more recently when I decided to look into it again that I really began to understand it and take into consideration all of the factors. I classified myself as strictly a hetero-romantic person and at the time heterosexual. So by doing that, I was looking and seeing sort of how the scale went down from 1 to 6. But at that time, I started questioning my own sexuality, wondering, well, maybe I wasn't seen as a 1, but maybe more along the lines of a 2 or a 3. Being a mathematical person and a science person, I saw this use of numbers as something that I personally could relate with and saw it as something that I could possibly find useful. It wasn't until later that I realized I was more off the scale. Well, you might be wondering how me personally could relate to being on the Kinsey scale. Well, about the past year or so, I've been questioning more of who I am as an individual, both sexuality and gender, and through that I've sort of found myself to be going back and forth, classifying myself as heterosexual. At one point I believed I was homosexual and panromantic, but it wasn't until I really found a sexuality that it seemed to fit me personally. I still feel that as an individual, it's not really where I might be set. Something that makes me who I am, I identify as a gray A, where I feel my sexuality is actually somewhat more fluid than might be believed. The vast majority of the time, I feel no sexual attraction to people, but once in a while there are some urges which seem to confuse me from time to time. Sort of this confusion led to me thinking, well, what if I wasn't just asexual, or this gray A term? What if my sexuality did go back and forth? Now, something that affects me more as an asexual is my romantic fluidity. When I was younger growing up, I would always watch those Disney movies and seeing the princesses being swept up by the princes or being independent women and standing up for themselves while still finding romantic interest in men. Well, times have changed and people have changed, and heck, I sure know I have changed. Being a young adolescent and not knowing much other than what I learned in Disney movies and what my parents have told me, I started to sort of question what was going through my head when I not only was developing crushes on guys, but some of my good girlfriends as well. Around the age of 15, I realized that I had a few crushes on girls throughout the years, and this didn't really seem to disturb me as much as I thought it would. I had some friends in middle school that were lesbians, bisexuals, and I thought, well, maybe it might fit me. It wasn't until the term panromanticism came into my life that I sort of seemed to find something that finally seemed to fit me, that I could like anyone regardless of their gender, and I just sort of fell for them based more on intellect, humor, something that I really liked about. But although I finally had this label that seemed to fit me, it still wasn't enough to fully describe these feelings that I had felt. Although I found this label that seemed to fit me, it still wasn't enough to describe these feelings that I actually felt. Sometimes I was attracted to girls, sometimes guys, sometimes genderqueer. It was pretty much a sinusoidal wave. Oh yeah, you know those voluptuous curves. So really the idea of sexual fluidity and romantic fluidity in my case is something that really appeals to me. That as I grow older or just experience something tomorrow, it's something that could change just like that. I mean, everyone changes and everything changes, which includes sexuality. It isn't something that should be stuck right in the middle or set there for life, but it's something that changes and something that develops as you grow. I know I'm comfortable with the idea that my romantic interest may change, and who knows, maybe even someday my sexuality. But for now, it sort of helps me to have my labels while knowing that they aren't set in stone. So that was pretty much my spiel on sexual and romantic fluidity. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm off to study for all the tests I have before winter break, and I will see you guys next week.